Our next guest is Catriona Crowe!
Hello, Catriona.
How do you do, sir?
I'm very well, thank you.
Thank you.
I don't think that I know you.
Yeah, I have you at a huge disadvantage now. Because I know all about you and you know nothing about me. I could interview you.
It wouldn't be as interesting as you might think.
I think
What's your story?
OK, I am an archivist. I've looked after historical documents in the National Archives of Ireland for 40 years. I had the privilege of putting the 1901 and 1911 censuses online, free to access for everyone here and abroad to look at, and discover their ancestors, good, bad and indifferent, whenever they wanted to. I also discovered in 1996 2,000 files relating to the adoption of Irish children in America from the 1940s on, which became part of the conversation about that whole distressing, dreadful time when women were deprived of their children in mother and baby homes and they were shipped off to America for adoption. That conversation is still going on today, as you know. And I have numerous other interests, but we'll stick to those ones for the moment.
Just to clear something up before we horse into it, you said people's ancestry. You haven't looked up mine by any chance, have you?
Alas, sir, no. I didn't know enough about you to check it out. But if you give me all the details, sure, I'll do it tomorrow. And
it's funny, I come from one of those families where one side of the family, everyone is available.
Yeah.
And we know what people did. But the other side of my family is just... And I don't know if this is a common thing, but there was a lot of secrets.
There were, and sometimes still are. Like, part of the mission was to be able to put as much information online as possible.
Yeah.
So there's a lot more stuff there now than there was 20 years ago.
Did you do much research into your own family?
I did. I mean, I started work in the Public Record Office, as it was called, in the forecourts in 1974. I declare myself now as one of those owl ones that you're constantly having rants about. You said on one of your programmes, anybody north of 60 is an owl one. Hello?
Yeah, but that's... You should claim it.
Oh, I do. I do. I just want to alert you, sir, to the fact that you'll be there yourself, not too far away.
And please God, I'll be riding owl ones when I get there.
You'll be an owl fella. No, I take great pleasure in being an owl one. Anyway, as a young one, when I was a young one, when I started work in that interesting place, which of course had been blown up in 1922 at the beginning of the Civil War, doing away with 800 years of Irish history. And the British Army didn't do it, the Black and Tans didn't do it, the fairies didn't do it, evil spirits didn't do it. We did it to ourselves. So we blew up our own history at the start of our existence as an independent state.
But not as a deliberate act of...
No, as a byproduct of, as a historian said to me, stop giving out about this, Catriona, you're always going on about it. When things get going, lads do things. And I said, can I quote you on that now, sir?
Jeez, that's a...
No. And I said, well, now I've got older and wiser and more tolerant. Yes, when things get going, lads do things. War, the fog of war tends to stop people thinking about the unintended consequences of what they're doing. But the fact is that the anti-treaty forces were in the forecourts for 3 solid months before there was a counterattack. They were going out to the pub every night, up to Barry's Hotel, to have chats with their National Army former comrades. Ernie O'Malley and Sean McBride were going up to Grafton Street every day to have coffee with ladies in Robert's Cafe, Dublin can be heaven, for a coffee at 11. And 3 sets of people, at least, came to them and said, please don't forget that in that building over there is 800 years of archives from going back to the 12th century. Please make sure they're safe.
But what kind of records would have been kept in
well,
that time?
The ones that I mourn the most are the census records for Ireland from 1821, 31, 41 and 51. Okay. So a complete record of every individual who lived in this country before the famine. I don't know if you've ever been to the deserted village in Achill. It's a very beautiful, silent place. As you walk along those streets, it's being excavated by archaeologists right now. It is terrible to imagine that we could know the names and occupations and religion and relationships of all of the people who lived in that village in 1841 before the famine depopulated it. We lost that. They went up in smoke. People sometimes think history is written down somewhere in a book. When I was working in the archives, I've now gone for 2 years, and the great relief is I don't have to get up in the morning anymore, which is a marvellous piece of liberation and joy. But when I was there, I would often get letters or phone calls from young people saying, can you send me the bit of the archives about Michael Collins? And you'd have to write back and say, there is no bit of the archives. There isn't a story written down as a continuous narrative. That's what you read in your history books. But behind that story are documents. And those documents are letters and maps and census returns and legal documents and photographs and all kinds of stuff that give us the full, never the full, but the complex picture that we can get from documentary history. You don't take that for granted.
Do we have an over-romantic view of the past in Ireland?
Yes, possibly and possibly not. I had the privilege of seeing you in John B. Keane's Sive, I think it was last year, playing that wicked, wily little matchmaker, Mickleen. You were brilliant, by the way. And you're very nice shins, I want to say that to you. You were wearing breeches. John B. Keane was one of the people who first revealed to Ireland, that held up a mirror to its face and said, this is what rural Ireland is like. Parents are prepared to sell their daughter for money. That's what Sive was about. And he sent that play to the Abbey Theatre. Ernest Blythe, who was the manager at the time, said, there are no people in Ireland like that. We are not showing that play. John B., who was smart, took it on the amateur circuit. Right. Thousands of people came to see it because they knew what they were seeing was the truth. So everything is a mixture. It's all complicated. And my slogan at all times about history is complicate the narrative. Do not look for black and white answers. They're not to be found. Things are far more complicated than we like to think. And when you start doing black and white answers, you get what we have in America today, alas. That's what comes out of black and white versions of where the world is.
It's a hard thing, you know, that notion of approaching the past. I suppose next year is the beginning of the remembrance of the Civil War.
No, the Civil War doesn't start in 1922.
Sorry about
We've one more year. We've one more year of the wonderfully peaceful War of Independence. Sorry, next year's going to be very hard. This year's going to be hard, next year's going to be hard. But at least we can say it was the Black and Tans, it was the auxiliaries, who were shocking depredators, dreadful people. Then we're going to have to face our own atrocities. That's going to be the hard one in 1922-23. It was a short civil war, but it killed a lot of people, and the results of it are with us to this day. We have two parties in this country who are civil war parties who were originally united. Let's hope they unite at some point in the future and stop that, because it would be much better if they did. But that goes straight back to 1922-23.
So how do we approach that without being poisoned by it?
Yeah, and we need to grow up and deal with it. We really do. And we can, you know. The Bureau of Military History, which the state kept locked up in a strong room in the department from the time it was taken, and would not open it up, year after year, banging on the door saying, please open this up, everyone's cool, it's a long time ago, we can do it. And we did. And there's all kinds of stuff in that about my great-grandfather shot so-and-so, and so-and-so informed on whoever, and so on. Everyone said, grand. We can deal with this now, we're mature enough. It's 100 years ago, for God's sake. If we don't understand the origins of ourselves as an independent state, how can we hope to make anything of it? So let me just tell people about this, because they need to know. The Bureau of Military History is online. You can find it, no problem. Just put Bureau of Military History into the Google search box and up it will come. And there you will find the oral history of the revolution. If you have anybody in your family who was involved, you will find their statement that they made in their own words. And believe me, it's a magical experience to have that.
So hang on.
That's there, but what's coming?
People made a statement?
Yes. In the 1940s, Eamon de Valera realised that a lot of people who were involved in the revolutionary struggle were dying. So he set up a thing called the Bureau of Military History, a state agency which was staffed by people who had been members of the National Army, the Free State Army, and members of the anti-treaty side from the Civil War, right? So that they would be able to go and talk to their people and get them to make statements.
I'm just blown away by the idea of all these people saying, almost like a Truth and Reconciliation Committee, this is what I saw, this is what I did.
Yeah, and they did. And because it's in their own words, Tommy, it's incredibly moving. And I've seen people break down and cry when they read something from their grandfather who they might never have met. Or if they did, that they recognise the voice and the cadences that they're hearing. So it's an absolute treasure trove, and it's a whole new window. That's what I mean by more information. We're getting stuff that we never had before, that was kept locked up because everyone was afraid of it. So the more that comes out, the less afraid we get, the more we can look at it. There could still be rows, but for most of us, what we need to know is good, solid, evidence-backed information about our past, and indeed our present. We all know the expression fake news. We hear it from a certain orange-hued person in the White House regularly, directed at very reputable organisations like the Washington Post and the New York Times. Fake news is a very dangerous thing, because what it means is opinion supplants fact. You don't need to be asked, how do you know that? The most important question any informed human being can ask another human being is, how do you know what you know? We have to be used to asking for evidence for assertions that people make, and to know ourselves what the tools are for testing that evidence. That's what history teaches us.
Like, looking back in the way you do, I mean, we're kind of leaning towards the strife, if you like, in terms of the stories. But are there joyous things you discover? Is there stuff that makes you laugh looking back?
Absolutely, yeah, all the time. My favourite census return is the Cullens of Blessington Street. Mr. and Mrs. Cullen and their 4 ambitious daughters. One of them is a typewriter, that's what they were called then. Teasy is a typewriter. There was a bookbinder, and there were 2 more. And then the last member of the family is Tatters. Tatters Cullen, aged 4, place of birth, County Longford, relationship to head of family, dog. They put their dog in the census. So I keep telling people, put your pets in the census, for God's sake. In 100 years' time, you'll give such joy and delight to everybody.
Do you have a sense of the type of ritual, the type of celebration, the type of commemoration that we should aim for 21 and 22?
I'm not that keen on commemoration, to be honest with you. I think commemoration of violent periods is not a great idea. I was fairly dismayed by the recent RIC controversy. I think it was a huge mistake on the part of the Department of Justice to want to do that, to have a big commemoration in Dublin Castle for the RIC. Don't be doing that. You know, there is a very good organisation for former policemen that can look after all of that stuff themselves and do it with great dignity and respect. What amazed me, though, was how certain a lot of people were that had they been alive in 1919 or 20, that they certainly would never have been an RIC man, they might have been. That if they had been, they would have left immediately and gone and joined the lads in the hills. Do we know they would? No. If they'd had a wife and children, that would have been as naught to them. Fine, Ireland is more important than your family. We have to think ourselves back into people's minds at the time and what they saw their world as, and not read history backwards, which is very, very common. To look at history from where we are now and not to think, well, actually, there were loads of things they didn't know then. Nobody foresees the future. We do not know now where we're going to be in 3 or 4 years' time. We don't know what is going to happen to us. Things have happened in my lifetime that I never expected. And that was the same for them. So a kind of empathy, particularly with those with whom we might not agree now, is very important.
I think it's a difference between... There is a difference between acknowledging and commemorating.
There is. I like the terms reflection and interrogation. I think we need to reflect on what happened, and we need to interrogate it, by which I mean good scholarship. Find out what happened, look at the archives, look at all of that.
Great. It's been a pleasure talking to you, Catriona.
Thank you, Tommy.
Thank you very much for coming on the show. Ladies and gentlemen, Catriona Crowe.